Right. Now you can see why I need to keep on time. We've got 32,000 years to cover in a total of 450 minutes. So let's not hang around. A sort of philosophical introduction. What is the point of history? I don't do social media other than the Facebook Western Then and Now, and it strikes me that a fair number of contributors to that think history as an excuse for being able to say the world used to be good and it no longer is. And I just feel that with history we need to be very careful how we look at history, how we use it, and how we interpret it. So what is the point of local history? It clearly helps us identify with our past. And the older we get, the more past we have. Though I'm not convinced that the older we get, the better our memories become. I always used to joke with my mother, who always told me, apparently when she was a child, that every summer was sunshine. No, it wasn't, Mother. You only remember the nice summers. It's like people always telling us how the world used to be good and how dreadful it is now. And thankfully, we do remember the good things. We tend to put the bad things away from our brains, our minds. So it does help to identify with the past. It hopefully helps us understand the present, and it might help us determine the future. I always believe that a sense of place comes from an understanding of how a place developed, and therefore how it might develop in the future. So here we have now come out of winter, we're into sunshine, and here we are in the Winter Gardens. And it's a building which has gone through change, hasn't it? We are seeing these changes as we come here. What was it like to start with? I mean, if we go back to when this was just a field, and you can see, oh, it doesn't work on it. No,
it was, I did see it.
Did you?
But it's
no, okay. If we go back to the 1806 map, the green that I've marked on here, that's the field. This was a field. There's nothing else here. Street here is the street, High Street, West Lane, West Street, Waterstall Road, which is now Regent Street, the beach, which was rather grandly called the Strand in 1810, but absolutely nothing else, just a few cottages and the parish church up there through a little track that went up through the park, not Lower Church Road, that didn't exist. So there it was in the days of the village. And here's an old print of this field. You can see here the Royal Hotel, that facade there, the Imperial, South Terrace, High Street, and Veranda House here. And this is the field. Moving on, we look out of the window. Most people look at the Royal Hotel and they think the side around the front is around there. Well, it is now, but this is the Georgian front. This is the front of the hotel. This is the front. The bit that we now see around on the other side, that's a much later extension. And why is it this way? Well, look at it. It's facing north-south. It was only idiots who built their properties facing the sea when all the wind would come in. Nobody built on an east-west projection. It was always on a north-south. It's only since we've invented good quality glass that we've been able to turn our houses around and take advantage of the view. So there is the first development on this field overlooking here. And we can put some names to those buildings. The Royal Hotel, and the Bath Hotel, which is now the Imperial, South Parade, Waterloo House, which was demolished to make way for Waterloo Street, and High Street, which was just the street, and Veranda House, which is no longer there. And this is what it would have been like. Here we are in this building, we're looking across at Royal Terrace there, and this is the hotel field. This is where we are in the Winter Gardens. And look, swinging down to what used to be the old NatWest Bank, the Imperial Hotel, and right the way down to High Street here. And Veranda House has gone. And in this photograph, it's been replaced by Hans Fowler Price's new post office. But this is still an open field. It was called the Hotel Field. And that's what it became. It became the Winter Gardens, place for the pavilion, and the Rose Gardens, and the Italian Gardens. So history changes all the time. It's never been one thing that people go on about how wonderful it was in the 1980s. No, it wasn't an awful. What they're doing is thinking way back to what it was like decades before that. And that's what it's like today. I mean, go back, that exact position then was the food festival a couple of weeks ago. So things change. History is always changing. And here you can see Veranda House, which is gone, taken over by the new post office, Lance and Lance buildings, what older people still call Lance's Corner, taken down after wartime damage. And this is the new head post office. This photograph taken about 1908, roughly 8 or 10 years after it had been built. A very handsome building by Hans Fowler Price. Not a single stone of it is left. If you stood there looking at that handsome building today, that's what you would see. The probably arguably less than handsome facade of the Sovereign Centre. Then on the site of the field here, in 1924, the council decided it wanted to build a pavilion. And so this plan appeared in the Western Mercury, Royal Hotel Field Improvement. There's the word improvement. And there were people then who were moaning, no, this is desecration of our open space, how dare you build that? Same old arguments. And so they started to build it. And gradually over the years, bits and pieces were added to the back of it. By the 1960s, 70s, into the 80s, it was looking pretty rum at the back. The east side of it had been much tampered with. And so that today has gone and is replaced by the new University Centre, and here we are sitting in the replacement. So history changes, things change all the time, and we need to keep a proper eye on how things have changed, why they've changed, and hopefully understand how the future might pan out. Just as a building changes, it changes for all sorts of reasons, maybe because the use is no longer what it was. The Winter Gardens, and this building is now a seat of academia, but still the ballroom is a place of entertainment. It happens to be run now by a different organisation from the one which built it. So here are some of the events which took place in here, and these are the events which take place here now. Some are the same as before, they're just a bit updated, others are completely new. There's even a grand piano here. Gone are the days when the council had to hire a grand piano whenever anybody came to play. Well, the college has one. And the restaurants have changed, the cafe there, or Lassiter's, the main restaurant on the seafront here. And people interpret history in different ways, and in Weston we had one very, very competent cartoonist who was able to show history through the eyes of a man of amusement. Alfred Leet, he sketched this to commemorate the opening of the Winter Gardens Pavilion. I've redrawn the wording, so just so you can see it. Here, I mean, this man looks like the town clerk from Dad's Army, here by on this auspicious occasion, and sitting to his right is the man who came to open it, the vice chairman of the Great Western Railway, which begs the question, why could Western only get the vice chairman and not the chairman of the railway company? But anyhow, there's his thought process, go Great Western, go Great Western. But the man sitting next to him was the owner of the Campbell's fleet of paddle steamers. So go by Campbell's, no, don't go by the railway, go by the ship, and you can come from Wales, and he's obviously on there across the channel. Now here we've got local worthies, chairman of the council, the man who wants to be the chairman and wants to become mayor, and does eventually become mayor, Henry Butt, the thing mentions mayors, and of course that's a play on words because he bought up all the big houses on the hillside in the 1920s and 30s and converted them into flats and called each one of them such and such a name, mansions. So up on the hillside, anything which has the word mansions was actually developed by this man. Now he's playing again another trick because but his name is also Butter, but he wants me and my turn's coming, so it's pecking order. And down here are these worthy councillors who don't say anything, the silent six. And again, does anything change? Come to a council meeting today, you'd see exactly the same people who say absolutely nothing, a few people who do say things, the competition that's going on between people. And here was Alfred Leach drawing this wonderful sketch of the opening of this building. And here he is. His parents owned the Addington Hotel on the seafront up by Claremont, which is now, it's still called Addington, but it's a block of flats. He was an incredibly famous artist. The college likes to think he developed his artistic career in the School of Art. I've never come across any documentary evidence to prove that. He was at Kingsholm School, which is now replaced by a block of flats at the top of Rundle Road. Whether he came to this college or not, I don't know. If he did, then it would be a very worthy person to remember because he was incredibly famous. He produced this iconic poster. I know the word iconic is overdone nowadays, but that poster, Your Country Needs You, is his drawing. He is a Western boy. He certainly went to school here. He went to London and became a professional artist, and that's what he is most famously remembered for. But he's buried in Weston, Milton Road Cemetery. This is his grave, and it has his lettering, his lead lettering in his style on his grave. So he's come home, and maybe this year, because we are commemorating the 100th anniversary of the end of the First World War, there is a possibility that the original poster, which is in the Imperial War Museum, might belong to Western Museum. I'm under strict instructions to say no more than it's a possibility, but it ought to come here. This is part of Western. So I'm introduced this talk with these slides of this building and people associated with this building, just to emphasise how things do change and how we need to keep an open mind. We don't necessarily need to agree with what change comes about, but we need to understand that it has come about and why it's come about. So, Italian gardens. Oh, the only thing that makes it Italian is this bit of balustrading, which happened to become available when this big house in Croydon, Beddington House, was being demolished in the 1920s. And the council surveyor happened to be up there, and on the back of a lorry, he put all this stonework, carted it back to Weston. It was like eBay in the 1920s. Oh, I'll have that, I'll give you £0.50 for it. Brought it, and then thought, what should we do with this? Henry Buck gave the land, and the council surveyor stuck up the balustrading, and it's Italianate, so let's call it the Italian Gardens. Got nothing to do with Marconi, but here are some wonderful statues which I like to show my political friends these. The one is humility and the other is vanity. So you choose which one you think is relevant to what you do. And again, change, because the gardens have changed, and even new statuary is coming in, provided by the Civic Society. And some people have said how awful it is over there. Okay, that's a point of view. But I would say, look at what it was like 2 years ago. Was that particularly attractive? Because that's what it was like, and that's what it is like. So, it's up to you to choose whether you think something is an improvement or not. So, let's start then with proper history. Let's go way, way back. If you've not been into the museum, some extremely good displays now, very intelligently set out, and the right font size for reading things, not too many words, and you don't have to go down there and look with a purple light at something you can't possibly read. So if you've not seen it, do. So we go back into early Weston. We've been here 35,000 years. So when people say Weston's a modern place, no it isn't. Our forebears have been here for 35,000 years. During the Paleolithic time, people were using caves at Uphill. The Mesolithic time, we found flints at Whirl. Neolithic time, there are burials found at Old Mixon. We've been through the Copper Age, the Bronze Age, and finally the Iron Age, up on the hill with Welbury Hill Fort. So we've gone right the way through these prehistoric times, and Weston has been here and people have been here. So we are a truly ancient settlement. The caves at Uphill were unfortunately lost because it became a quarry, and so the hill was gradually cut away. There's still a little bit of a cave there, as anyone will remember when we were kids at school, and you could get there. There was no fencing around it. You could go in and pretend it was a huge cave. No, it's not a huge cave, because most of it has been quarried, but it had been a huge cave in which all sorts of interesting finds came about. They had to stop quarrying, of course. There was a church in the way, so they got as close as they could to the church and no further. Look down here, you can see the lime kilns, the remnant of which is still there by the cafe at the boatyard. And there you can see the lime kiln. And this today is the boatyard and that might be pond, and here's the cafe. And the cliffs today. This is where our forebears were. They were here in Uphill. Not only were they here, but there's some pretty awful animals as well that were around. We know there was saber-toothed tiger. We know there were hairy elephants, mammoths. All these creatures were here. We know they were because we've got their bones. Different world, different climate. Don't forget, before the Ice Age, we were still linked to Europe, and there was, dare one say it nowadays, there was free passage between Europe and these islands. So I always liked to say when I was teaching to the kids at school, just imagine walking along the prom today and bumping into one of these things. Now, I think the most important place we have for early settlement in Weston has got to be Welbury, hasn't it? Anything which ends with the name Bury is a hilltop fort, a prehistoric fort. So Welbury is a stunning place which is just not recognised. It's a huge multivallate fort. Multivallate means it's got ramparts more than one. So this one it's a triple ramparted fort. There are only 50 in the country, so it makes it a hugely important hilltop fort, and it's one of very few which actually projects out towards the sea. So it is of national significance, and many now argue it's of international significance. I mean, these quotes from English Heritage: it's of national importance, it's an outstanding example of its class, it's unusual in terms of location, but it's a scheduled ancient monument at risk, which is pretty damning. It's an Iron Age fort, so that's from the 6th century BC right up through to the time when the Romans came. We're not absolutely sure why Welbury disappeared out of use. Did the Romans advance and then the residents went and they fled off to Wales, Ireland? Was it a pitched fight? We don't really know. But it's certainly a very large fort, 690 metres by 200 metres. Okay, well, this is just I'm sure it doesn't look like that. But it's this wonderful backdrop to Weston, isn't it? But if we look at it, it's a wooded backdrop. And that detracts from what Welbury is about. The woods are modern. The fortress is ancient. In fact, the trees are very modern, because the woods were clear felled in the First War. So it's all new growth. The only ancient woodland there is a little bit of Ashcombe, and the rest is modern. But you can see from these drone photographs, can't you, how strategic the hill is. If you are there, imagine it with no trees, you can see all the way around. In terms of strategic defence, it's an idyllic location. And if you look at that photograph, this is an aerofold, much earlier photograph, but you can pick out the southern rampart still here. And this is the fortress. The rest of the hill, of course, is utterly irrelevant compared with the fort here. So it's that end of it which is really important. And the Victorians loved it. I mean, they would produce all these prints and woodcuts and paintings. They considered it to be a very romantic hill, and it was the place to go and walk. It's the place where the Smith Pigots eventually started planting trees, but it was also a place where people would just go and win stone. If you were building your garden walls, well, there's a lot of free stone up there, so just go and take it, which has helped to destroy the archaeological remains. But it happened, so that's part of history. This, as you see, is an 1864 print. By 1893, here's a painting by Charles Tucker, which is in the museum. And here on the southern ramparts, we can still see the exposed stone. Come 1910, the photograph there, again. This is a favourite place to take the photograph. Generation after generation of people have taken their pictures through the woodland, looking down onto the spire of Holy Trinity Church and across to the pier. And even today, you can still do it. But you are less likely to find a position where trees don't interfere with the photograph. And the early maps, these are the early Ordnance Survey maps, you can see I've coloured in red the southern ramparts here, and in green these eastern ramparts. The eastern ramparts were terribly important because if you were going to attack Welbury, you wouldn't attack it from the seaside. Well, they just lob their stones down and that's the end of you. You couldn't attack it from the north because that's a very steep hill. You couldn't attack it from the south because, again, it was the hill and they had the stone rampart all the way around. The vulnerable way in was, of course, the eastern side. And so they had this triple layer of high stone, ditch, high stone, ditch, high stone, ditch. So if you got over the first rampart, okay, good luck, but you were then into the ditch and you had to get over there. So the chances of getting in there were pretty slight. Incidentally, if any of you want to access the original large-scale Ordnance Survey maps, just Google National Library of Scotland, and the whole of Western are there. 50-inch plans, 25-inch plans, 6-inch plans, free to download. It's really, really good. And what did it look like? Well, there's a lot of conjecture. This is one sketch of what it might have looked like. Obviously flat on there, Burndeck Island here. But this is the sort of view it would have had. And here's another idea of what it might have been like. And this is what we think. I mean, this is not a sketch of this particular camp, but this is what we think it would have been like up on the hill. With the ramparts, the ditches, entrances, guardrooms, houses, granaries, hearths, ovens. It was a place where people lived. We used to think Welbury Hill was just a place where people came when there was an attack in the area. So it was a sort of fort there to be used occasionally. I think the feeling now is that it was actually occupied. It wasn't just something you went to when you were under attack. Again, just scale. So here we are with the eastern ramparts. Very, very difficult for many people to appreciate exactly what its purpose is. The average person, I'm sure, walking through the woods, it's just a pile of stones and trees and bracken, and they don't really appreciate it because of the tree cover. The whole point of Welbury is it should be seen, and today it's hidden. So we've done, in terms of archaeology, we've done it no service whatsoever. The stone is all cut. I mean, this took a lot of time, a lot of expertise to build these walls. I mean, these were really high walls. And the southern defences now, very difficult to appreciate. Here, there's far too much growth in the area. But gradually, in the middle of it, it's just called the Glade now. Lots of volunteers going up there on Mondays and Fridays and cutting stuff down. And so the central part of the encampment is now more exposed than it has been for a long time. But we have some wonderful finds. If you want to go and meet these people, they're in the museum. They actually die a fairly gruesome death. This one, there's a hole right in his skull, so somebody lobbed a spear into him. That was the end of him. And I'm always amazed, actually, when you think of the diet they had, how some of the teeth are really so good. Compared with children's teeth today, I suspect those will last longer than many sugar teeth of modern people. There we are. These are in Western Museum. Charles Diamond, he did the first survey, Victorian survey, 1886, a really good book. And he recorded 93 pits. And there's just been, this month, a modern radar reconnaissance of it, and they discovered over 80 of those pits, which Diamond had discovered in 1886, 93. So we'll try and find where the others are. I mean, it could be all sorts of things that they've gone. There we are, 93 pits. We found the remains of all these things: pigs, horses, goats, wheat, barley, oats. Now, wheat, barley, oats, beans, it does mean that people are living here. They weren't just coming here when they were under attack. And it's interesting that cast bronze collar which was found, it was made in Germany, so there's trade going on here way back in the Iron Age. And a Roman coin hoard was found from AD 450, but we just don't know why it's there. Well, the Romans wouldn't have occupied, but they wouldn't have lived up there, but they would have been interested in making sure that nobody else could live there. Now, whether towards the end of the Roman Empire, Roman occupation, a Roman person decided he would bury his treasure and then come back and find it later, but these things happen, don't they? And these are the pits. Now this map and this aerial photograph are exactly one on top of the other. So this is the map, and this is the photograph. Now this is a modern photograph, and it is said by English Heritage to be at risk for all sorts of reasons. But the biggest risk is the tree cover. It's not the tree. It's not the leaves. It's not the tree cover. So it's not the canopy, but the roots. The roots of the trees are doing untold damage, and trees which fall, they're doing even more damage. And of course, this is limestone upland. This is not the natural habitat for woodland. The soil cover is so thin, the trees never reach a great girth. And as they do get bigger, the roots haven't gone down far enough, they can't, and they fall. So we have a major problem with over-wooding that area. This is what it should be like. This is Carboniferous limestone upland, Dalbury Warren, you think of places like that, completely exposed, no tree cover. This is what Worldbury Hill should be like in terms of archaeology, rather than in terms of pretty woodland. But the Victorians, they want to get up there, and this is the track they put up, the encampment steps, as it is called, at the top of Camp Road, and that's a photograph today, exactly the same, except the sign tells you are entering a Roman camp. Well, it isn't a Roman camp, it never has been a Roman camp, but somebody hasn't corrected the sign yet. There's a problem, there are various problems. Vandalism is one of them, but I don't think it's intentional vandalism. I think it's people going up there and thinking, oh, there's a pile of stones, let's build a cairn, let's build a den. And so we take out these important rocks and make a new pile of stone. Isn't that fun? It's not intentional vandalism, it's just a nuisance. So that's got to be addressed. And here's the latest thing: somebody built that, or somebody, or groups of people, totally destroying part of that archaeology. So the interesting thing, well, this is England, we love to get bogged down by law, but in order to repair this damage, permission has to be sought from English Heritage to remove the cairn that somebody has just built in order to put it back where it should be. So, but there we are. And there are now various groups. There's one particular group, the Friends of Worldbury Hill Fort, and they now go up regularly. They're doing some sterling work. And grant aid has just come from the Heritage Lottery Fund for the first bit of work to start on it. So that's going to be announced in the next few weeks. I'm far too old to be into great technology, but some of the satellite and some of the digital photography which is now occurring and electronic map work is really good, because it's exposing things which the naked eye doesn't see, or my old-fashioned surveying techniques wouldn't be able to highlight. And this is one model that's just come out, and you can see quite clearly the ramparts, can't you, on that imagery. This is a light detection and ranging LiDAR. I don't know if any of you are surveyors know what this means, right? So, and again, you can see here the important southern ramparts. And these latest two, which I've just got hold of, I think these are stunning. And it's got rid of all the trees, it's got rid of all the superfluous stuff, and you can see quite clearly here, can't you, the whole arrangement. And look at these. It's coming up wonderfully. So there's a great deal of interest now being shown nationally in Worldbury Hill. So it's something which I hope in the not too distant future we will see great emphasis being placed on it. So this is what it should be like. This is Brean Down. Same geology, Carboniferous limestone, thin soil covered, grass, and kept down by rabbits and goats and things like that. Well, there are rabbits up on Worldbury Hill, but there are no goats, because people have gardens abutting it, and they wouldn't like goats, because goats would eat their roses. So it's a different kettle of fish, isn't it? So Brean Down there, another museum picture. And whilst the National Trust can put goats on Brean Down, these very sure-footed goats, and they keep all the bracken down, we can't have them up on Worldbury Hill, unfortunately. So, whilst we're across Brean Down, of course, Brean Down became an important site for the Romans. Not that they occupied it, but given its position and its hilltop nature, and the way in which the Roman mythology worked, building a temple on the top was one way of communing with their gods. And Bristol University Archaeology Department surveyed the site. Oh gosh, this is going to be back in the 1960s, I thought. And this was the model which they produced from the foundation. If you go up there now, you won't see any of it, because being good archaeologists, they covered it up with earth to stop people going and messing about. But this is what it would have been like, we think. So, religious groups have often gone for hilltops. The Romans did, Christianity has, the pagans. So, hilltop locations were popular. Here, Brean Down. And of course, this whole area became very important to the Romans, not just because it was of military significance, and conquest and so on, but also it was the mineral wealth here, the lead. And so the Mendips became an important mining area for the Roman Empire. I mean, we had the best, the most productive lead processing plant in this part of the Roman Empire, just outside Weston, on the Mendip Hills at Charterhouse. This ingots were being stamped. Thankfully, the Romans, they were so well organised that they'd stamped the date or the emperor's name on each ingot of lead. So we found them later. And this one, like many of them, it was just unearthed. It had obviously fallen off the classic off the back of a lorry, and the Romans couldn't be bothered to pick it up. You know, these are there's one in the Heritage Centre at Taunton, which a fortnight ago, found fairly recently, a fortnight ago, I was invited to pick it up. Well, quite frankly, if this had fallen off your cart, I was like, sorry, I'll just leave it there and we'll carry on. And that's probably how these have been found. But because they mark them, that gives us a wonderful, well, not just a clue, but just proof of where they came from. The Fosse Way, from Ilchester up to Bath, that was really the line which divided the Roman area from the frontier land. Everything to the west of Fosse Way was considered by Romans to be a bit dubious. So we were not very nice people. The Romans didn't particularly like us. They hadn't properly subjugated us. We were a bit woolly, wild, and we could potter across the Channel of Wales or Ireland and come back. We were always, in this part of the empire, a bit of a thorn in the flesh. But here, up on the Mendips, we have this great area of lead, particularly here at Charterhouse. Now, this is to the west of the Fosse Way, and being lead, of course, heavy stuff, you've got to have roads to move it. And so the Romans built a road from Charterhouse up to the Fosse Way, and then it could go in either direction. But why come all the way from here up Fosse Way to go there? Why not land here and come in? And so we know the Romans did build a Roman road from the coast somewhere here across to Charterhouse. And we have that name, Roman Road, still on Bleedon Hill, and we think that is the Roman road. What we don't know is where it terminated at Uphill, because the coastline has changed, the river's changed. We're not quite sure where it entered the sea, but certainly this is where Romans would have brought lead and exported it. Charterhouse itself today, you go up there, and every school trip goes up to Charterhouse. You won't see any of the Roman stuff there. This is much later, because we carried on smelting lead there right up until the 19th century. So these are later workings, but it's all great fun to run in and out. This is where kids go. And this is the slag, the leftover. It's interesting, isn't it, to think of something as beautiful as the Mendip Hills being one of our most important industrial areas. And it's rather like going to parts of South Wales now. When in the 1960s I was a student and went on geography fieldwork to the Clivet Valley and saw the despoilation there, and I thought, God, this is awful. And the last time I went back, it's all sort of green and trees and fields, and I think, well, where's all this dereliction which I remember when I was a student? And the same here, it's just over a different length of time, isn't it? And interestingly here, this is where the college is. All of this land was poorly drained marsh. Out here at St George's, there were salt pans, so the Romans were able to produce salt. So where Davern's caravan sales point is, that was a salt distribution centre. We know the Romans were here because we've unearthed Roman bits and pieces. We know there's a stone building, we've enamel brooches, beads, mosaic. But of course the coastline was different from what it is now. It was a bit further out. The sea levels change, but it was all very, very poorly drained. And this tells us where we know without any shadow of doubt, there has been Roman occupation. We know where the college is, South Terrace, Royal Crescent, Roslin Avenue. We have unearthed Roman remains. It doesn't tell us the Romans were living here, but it tells us they were here and doing something. And even names. Okay, we have the Roman road on Bleaton Hill, but two names at Uphill are indicative of Roman occupation. One is the word Walborough, which is a little hill, hummock, it's a sort of pimple really. If you go past the cafe at the boatyard and you walk along the new footpath that's been created, on the right hand side there's just a bit of a hill before you get to the river. That's Walborough. And that was possibly some sort of Roman lookout point, which would have been associated with the port. And then there's a little track which goes down at the side of the golf course, where it comes to that nice woodland. And though there's no name there, that is Cold Harbour Lane. And Cold Harbour is another name indicative of Roman occupation. So we know the Romans were here. There's no doubt about that. And this is where, somewhere here, their harbour would have been. Okay, well, I must throw this one, of course. It's we all know, don't we, because we're in West Kensington, that Jesus came here. You're frowning. Right, now then, prove me wrong. Jesus died about the age of 33. We know something about his last 3 years. We surmise when he was born, but no, it certainly wasn't December. And what did he do when he was a teenager? We haven't a clue. But here we do know, because Uncle Joe, Joseph of Arimathea, was a metal merchant, and he came over to these islands to do trade with the lead mining industry. And on one occasion, Jesus, teenager, doesn't know what to do, have a bit of a gap year, go with Uncle Joe to the British Isles and go and look for lead. So, having come here, they would have landed at Uphill, walked over Bleaton Hill on the Roman road to Charterhouse, and got the lead and gone back home. Blake then wrote his poem, his rather left-wing poem, and did those feat in ancient times, walk up on England's mountains green. Well, the mountains green are Uphill and Bleaton Hill. Those feet came here. So in terms of what we should be doing in tourism, forget Canterbury, forget Glastonbury, forget Rome. Uphill is the place that ought to be selling itself, because this is where Jesus came. Now we know that. All I say is prove me wrong. Prove me right, that's a different thing. But there are all sorts of medieval stories about what Jesus did when he was young. And okay, Cornwall might equally claim, but they're the wrong side of the Tamar, so that's their problem. No, he came here, he didn't go to Cornwall. Joseph then came back a bit later and wandered along the same road and got halfway up Glastonbury Hill, got so tired, stuck his stick in the ground because he was weary, and so that today is called Weary Hill, and the stick blossomed and became the tree which flowers every Christmas, and a sprig is cut off and sent to the Queen. Yeah, okay, right. What's wrong with having a few legends to go with history, providing we don't actually use them as fact? And quite a lot of people do that sometimes. There we are, it's a nice way. So let's move on. We've done ancient history, prehistoric history, we've got the Romans. The Romans have been booted out, they've gone out at 410, the Roman Empire collapsed, and we sank into what historians used to call the Dark Ages, but it's no longer the dumb thing to refer to as the Dark Ages. We only really refer to it as Dark Ages because we don't have that much evidence about it, there's not much written stuff, so we're in the dark. I think we still are, but it doesn't imply that they were dark people, heavens no, and some of the art that comes from that era is anything but dark. But there is a link here with where we live and that time. The northern part of High Street, with the little alleyways that go down behind the Britannia, we think this is probably this is probably a pre-Norman road area. Words like Worthy Lane, this indicates something from pre-conquest days. So we're talking of pretty ancient settlement here. A coin from Edmund I has been found. Now, when was it dropped? We don't know, but possibly from that era. There may well have been a wooden church. Most of the stone churches were built on sites of previous churches or on sites of previous pagan temples, which would have been of wood before stone. And so there may well have been a timber church in Weston. Certainly by the 7th or 8th centuries, the parishes were here, and we lived in the hundred of Winterstoke in the Shire of Somerset. So this all predates the conquest. Even the word shire is pre-Norman. The shire reeve, the sheriff, the person who looked after the shire, and we still have a sheriff of Somerset, and the Americans use the word for their policemen. We use it for court officials, unless you go to Scotland, and it's a regular. These are words we still use. We have found evidence of pre-Norman occupation in this area, with some stone-walled, possibly animal enclosures, again up by the college, the Knightstone campus. Skeletons have been found in Park Place, Greenfield Place, Royal Crescent. And we know there are burials that were in Ashcombe Park, Montpellier, and interesting enough, in Milton Road Cemetery, there are remnants of burials from the Dark Ages. So it could be argued that we have one of the oldest occupied cemeteries in the country. And if we're looking to be better than anyone else, Milton Road Cemetery is very ancient. The two islands opposite, Steepholm and Flatholm, were both in occupation during the Dark Ages. The name Holm, it's a Scandinavian name. Stockholm. Holm is an island, a Scandinavian word for an island in a river area. So these are two Holms, two islands, given a Scandinavian name. We find Scandinavian names in eastern England quite a lot. Thorpe and By and places like that, because this is where the Vikings came across and attacked and settled. They came here and attacked, but didn't really settle. But we know that they used the islands as their sort of piratical basis. So there they were on Steepholm and Flatholm, and able to come over here, rape and pillage and do all the things that we suspect Vikings did, even if they didn't, and they certainly didn't wear cow horns in their helmets, but there we are. And they suddenly raided the coastline here. Easy pickings. This wonderful book, produced by John Hickley, who lives in Bleedon as an artist. If you've not seen it, this is just one page from. It's a stunning book, and it's full of stories and his own artwork. But I show you this picture because this is the River Axe, and here are the Vikings coming in to attack this area. And here is a wonderful. This is in Lympsham Village Hall, and it's referring to something called the Battle of Bleedon in the year 485, and it says, "Ye vessels lay on Axe's quay, ye Danes, ye swords uplifting, a Bleedon wife fetched forth a knife and sent ye ships a-drifting." There's a legend that the Vikings had come, they had dropped anchor at Uphill, they'd gone up onto Bleedon Hill to rape and pillage, but one of the women came along and cut the ropes and put holes in the boats. So when the Vikings got back to their boats, they couldn't sail and they were slaughtered. That was the Battle of Bleedon Hill in 485. Really, but there we are. Again, it's a nice little story. There's even the Cock and Bull story that is called Bleedon Hill because so much blood ran down the hill bleed on. It's not true at all. But these are nice, fanciful little tales. Then, of course, we get to 1066 and everything changes. So it didn't mean that it was dark before. It's just that things weren't as recorded. I mean, don't tell us that Alfred the Great was an uncouth, uncivilised, pre-Norman king. Absolutely not. And some of the jewellery that comes from that so-called Dark Age. But 1066 was a major change. And of course, it was the last time Britain was invaded, which helps, I think, to understand our position over Brexit, which, anyhow, that's a different subject. So, look at this, the Alfred Jewel. This is King Alfred's stunning jewellery, which is in the British Museum, but it was on loan to the Museum of Somerset at Taunton 2 years ago. A priceless work of art. So, don't let anyone say the Dark Ages were actually artistically dark. Trouble is with this whole thing, when you go and see it, there was a great build-up to come and see that, and I was a guest and I went to see it. You see this thing there. Well, yeah, okay, it's beautiful. I want to touch it. And you can't because it's in security glass. But here's the book that changes everything. Doomsday Book, published 1086. So William the Conqueror gets over here, and he wants an inventory. It's a taxation inventory. It's not a book to say where all the villages are and how many people are in. It's a book which tells us the inventory of every manor, not village, manor. It was a unit of government, and they come along and they record what each manor is worth, and it's recorded in Doomsday. There are 4 original copies still in existence, and it makes fascinating reading if you can read that. If you can't, then, like me, read the translation. And these are the Doomsday manors here. These are the manors as they existed in 1086. And look at the names. Uphill, Ashton, Milton, Worrell, Hewstoke, Woodspring, Hutton, Bleeden, Loxton, Compton Bishop, Winston, Fanwood. Over 90% of the settlements which we have in Britain today were here at Doomsday. We have hardly invented anything since Doomsday. Okay, our villages and towns have changed, they've grown, some have disappeared completely. But even the parish boundaries are virtually the same. But you'll know from there, one name is missing, Weston-super-Mare. It did not get into Doomsday Book, because Weston, which more than likely was here, as a few little homes, even if it did exist, it wouldn't have been recorded in Doomsday Book because it was not a manor. The manor was Ashcombe, and so Weston was in Ashcombe Manor. But it's amazing when you think not much has changed between 1066 and today. And these are the actual entries in Doomsday Book. And if you see the names here, Ashcombe, Ayscombe. This next one, where is it? I can't see where I am. Oh, Middleton, Milton. This one, Worrell. And fascinating, Worrell was spelt then as it is spelt today. It has not changed its spelling since 1066. Ashcombe, Ayscombe, Middleton, the place in the middle, Middleton, the place over the hill, Couchstoke, across that way, Opehope Hill, which we incorrectly now call Uphill. It's the place on the Pill. Pill is a West Country word for a little stream, a creek, but it's the place on the Pill, not stuck up a hill, because they didn't live up the hill. And Old Mixton, Norton, which no longer exists, other than Norton Farm and Norton Lane near Qstoke. That village just disappeared. And were, as I say, spelled exactly then as it still is today. Wonderful. So, there we are. We still have all of these places. This is the actual entry. It tells us who owns it. Walter de Dowie held Worl from the king, but it tells us that in Edgar's days it was somebody else. It was Edgar in the days of King Edward before the Norman Conquest. And we move on. Qstoke, Worspring, Woodspring, Opopel, Uphill. These are all the entries. Now, this begs the question. Milton is Middleton, so it's in the middle of something, isn't it? Across the hill was Northton, Norton. So if Milton is the Middleton, the ton to its east is called Worl. What is the ton to the west? West ton. So Weston was here, but it wasn't a manor. We are the ton in the west. The name Weston-super-Mare, which many people think is a modern invention of the Victorians or Georgians. No. It is the place in the West Ton. We then have two Latin names. Very few. The Romans had tremendous influence on this country, except on place names. It's interesting. Very few places in England have names which are Roman. But here in Weston-super-Mare, super is the Latin for above. It's nothing to do with being great. It's not beautiful sea, it's above. So it's super, and what's it above? Thanks to the BBC, we now mispronounce it. It's super mare. It's above the sea. Where St John's Church is just up there, that's the site of the ancient medieval church. It's just up above sea level. So this is the place in the west, just above the sea. Weston-super-Mare. With a lowercase s, please. I get quite pedantic over that. So, a modern translation of Ashcombe then, into which Weston lived. It's in the hundred of Winstoke. It's in the county of Somerset. Its total population, 18 households. It doesn't tell you how many people were there. There are 18 households. So in terms of its size, that's a medium-sized settlement. The tax assessed, 3.5 geld units. That's, again, medium taxation. The value. In 1086, it was valued at £5. 1070, it had also been £5. That's interesting because the valuation has stayed permanent. The valuation of Worl had gone down from £10 to £7, and it's often thought that's because of the Viking raids. The value had diminished. The households, there are 6 villagers, 5 smallholders, 7 serf slaves or porters, whatever rank they would have had. So those are the different, the 6 plus 5 plus 7 gives us the 18 household. There's land for 5 ploughs. The Lord has 2 plough teams and 3 men's plough teams. And it tells us what else there is. There's now 40 acres of meadow, 100 acres of woodland, of pasture, and 3 acres of woodland. That's probably the remnants we still have of the ancient Ashcombe wood, which is all that's left of old woodland in Weston, rather than this sort of modern woodland above. 30 cattle, 18 pigs, 136 sheep, and 60 goats. So there you are. That's Ashcombe. The lord of the manor is Herluin Way. We've named that after him. He was a Frenchman. He'd obviously been given the lordship by William, and he'd taken it from the previous lord of the manor, who'd been the Anglo-Saxon Brictric. So they booted one out, put the other one in. And that's the way it worked. The tenant-in-chief was the Bishop of Coutances, because when William came over, he didn't just bring his lords, he brought all his bishops as well. So they took over the entire administration of the country. One thing they had to do was make sure that the peasants didn't revolt. Nothing worse than revolting peasants. So the first thing you do is you come in and you build what I refer to as timber police stations. You build these batches. And here at Castlebatch, what we now call Castlebatch, is Hill of Well. There's the land. It's all been shoveled up, and you put timber palisades around and a guardhouse inside, and you station a company of 10, 20 soldiers in there to make sure the locals behave. And dotted around, they have these batches, and eventually, of course, they're then able to build proper stone castles. And the nearest one, the biggest one here, would have been Bristol, on Castle Green, as it's now called. Once all those big stone castles had been built, these outposts and sort of little police station things, they could gradually go. But the earthworks are still there. And how appropriate that's now a public park in the middle of the world. I just wonder how many people realise that was the police station where they kept all the youths under control. Now, most of the churches in this area, certainly built by the 12th, 13th century, very few churches after that, up until the Victorian era. Some are much older, those certainly at Uphill Well and Cewstoke are of Norman foundation. So the Normans arrived here not just with their system of government, but also with their great engineering skills. They're able to build in a different style, in a much more permanent style. They can use round arches. Poor old Britons before, we couldn't work out how, and so we tended to like that or like that. But the Normans, they were great engineers. And at Uphill Church, there's lots and lots of original Norman stuff. I mean, look at these two wonderful doorways, one St Martin's Church Well, the other St Paul's Cewstoke. Clearly, Cewstoke had a bit more money to spend than Well. You look at the detailing on that wonderful dog-tooth thing in the doorway there, and the attention to detail here. This is they're a bit hard up here, aren't they? But that is stunning. But here they are, these 11th century doorways here in Westminster. An Uphill Church, the old church on the hill, that is. I mean, a lot of blocked up stuff. But here, this Norman arched window and the mass dial there. So you put a stick in there, and the shadow will tell you the time of the day, so whether it's time for mass. And every time I go up there, I put a stick in. And other people do it as well, so you can actually tell the time. Is it time for mass? And again, this is the old church on the hill. I always look at these sorts of things. Who actually toiled away, chipping that cross into the wall back in those early Norman days? And the gargoyles. I mean, these are wonderful things. The word gargoyle, it's a French word, but we've taken the word into gargle. Gurgle, gargle. When the water came down the roof of the church, you didn't want it going all the way down the stone, to make it damp all the time. Couldn't afford lead for lead pipes, so you built a gargoyle, great hole through its mouth. This one is from Well, this one's Cewstoke, and the water could come down and out of the mouth. It would gurgle and gargle out of the mouth, so it wasn't dripping down the wall. Very, very good way of getting rid of the water, and fantastic art as well. And of course the stonemasons, when they were up there, they could carve like they like. And so there's some wonderfully rude gargoyles all around the place. I mean, I think it's it's Brent Mining where they've used obviously the different anatomical end of a body. So I leave it as vague as that. If you're up there, who's going to stop you? The tithe. The church tax was the tithe, where you gave 1/10 of your income to the church. And income invariably meant goods, so wheat or oats, whatever, barley. And so each parish had its tithe barn. And here is the tithe barn at Well. Now, the tithe taxation system is amazing. It was introduced way before the conquest in 855. It wasn't finally abolished until 1977. I mean, can you a taxation system that went on and on over all that, I can't work out the number of years, but didn't finally finish until 1977. And so the goods were stashed in the tithe barn. And if you were the rector, you had the greater tithe, but if you were the vicar, you had the lesser tithe, because rectors were more important than vicars. It doesn't work like that nowadays, but they were. So, that tithe barn is still there. Look carefully at the buttressing. This is what the Victorians decided they would do with it, and they turned it into a village school in Worl, and those are buttresses. So the medieval tithe barn in Worl is now the village primary school.
Did you know they just recently had the roofs down there?
Indeed.
They had to have it done properly.
Yes, and the town council and World History Society are now hoping to get a blue plaque on the wall to say this is the original tithe barn.
Oh, that's
So, yeah. Now, here's a stunning tithe barn, Woodspring Priory, which is still in use as a barn. Even though the priory has long since been dissolved, the tithe barn is still in use as a barn. So, to Weston now, just a few dates. We had a rector, the parish priest, the first recorded one in 1180. So, you don't build a church and appoint a parish priest unless you've got people living there. So we can prove, ipso facto, Weston must have been here at 1180 if it had a parish priest, not just a parish priest, but a rector. So it's quite an important little village as well. We know the church, we know the building was here by 1226. By 1226, which means it would have been here before that. It lasted until 1824 and was replaced by the present St John's. We know that one of the taxes the rector had to give to Wells Cathedral was £100 of wax each year for the candles. Each parish was taxed for beeswax. And the rector of Weston used to get very angry. There was a lot of beeswax produced. And then the bishop got a bit cheesed off with him. In 1266, the living was confiscated. So he took the living away from the rector for very sound reason. The rector didn't actually go to church. So it was a bit much to have the parish priest be paid but not actually going. And so the living was confiscated. In 1327, we know, because we've got the documentary evidence, there were 15 landowning taxpayers in Weston. So, if anyone says to you Weston's modern, no it isn't. There's conclusive evidence. Black Death, 1348, well that wasn't a very rosy time because I think that's probably when the village of Norton went. You go through the countryside now, you often see churches, and you think, well, where's the village? It's because they died in the Black Death, and they all lived in their hovels, and the hovels just fell down, but the churches have been well built, so they're still there. In Weston, half of Somerset died in the Black Death. Worl lost 3 priests in 1 month. The vicars of Locking, Stoke and Weston all died. It even got to the point, good women's lib stuff this, it even got to the point where the Catholic Church allowed women to take confession in extremis, because otherwise, who could you confess to? You were about to die, and there was no male priest left, so women were allowed to take confession. So even then, okay, it wasn't a suffragette issue, but it's Now, after the Black Death, interestingly, because the population had been decimated, the workers could demand more money because there were fewer of them, and so you began to see a rise in the wealth of yeoman farmers, and in this part of the country, sheep became the source of immense wealth, and from the sheep industry, the taxation provided the most stupendous church towers. And so I argue that Somerset has the finest collection of church towers of any county in England. Okay, those in Norfolk like to think they've got them, they're along their way. But you go to some counties and their spires. Somerset is a county of church towers. Now, some of them are just magnificent things, all paid for, of course, out of taxation to the church. But you had to be wealthy in order to be taxed, and people in this part of the country were making a lot of money out of wool, as these wonderful illustrations show. So it was really the end of serfdom. We have managed to get rid of serfdom very early on, which again I think is one of the reasons why England's never really gone in for revolution, because things have happened so. We didn't end up like Russia with serfdom still in existence in the 20th century, long since gone. Interestingly, Edward III granted Wrecks of the Sea on Western Beach to the Bishop of Bath and Wells. So anything that was washed up could be claimed by the bishop. And in 1353, Bishop Ralph got so angry with Western people because they were pinching the flotsam and jetsam and the shipwreck stuff. He referred to Western men as being the sons of iniquity because they have stolen what he is entitled to have. So there's the bishop complaining that we're going down on the beach and beach combing. Woodspring Priory, wonderful building, founded in 1220 by the Courtenay family, whose grandfather had been one of the four knights to murder Archbishop Thomas Becket. The family was getting a bit worried because how can you get to heaven if your granddad killed the Archbishop? Well, the only way to do it is to build a little monastery, pay the priest to say Mass in memory of the murdered Archbishop in perpetuity, and only then would the sons of the murderer be able to go to heaven. So they paid to have this little monastery built, and the Black Canons there, otherwise known as monks, but they were Black Canons, of course they were Augustinian, they were there. It was only a very small practice, it wasn't on the scale of Bristol Abbey or Glastonbury Abbey, or this was a funny little thing at the end of nowhere. But they did say Mass for the dead Archbishop's soul, not in perpetuity, but up until dissolution and Henry VIII in 1536, and that was the end. But instead of pulling the building down, much of it had been lost. All of this bit had been lost in a fire. They never rebuilt it after the fire. But at the dissolution, it was simply sold and turned into domestic use. It became a house. But it didn't lose its ecclesiastical feel. If you go there today, it's owned by the Landmark Trust, and they rent it out. You can go stay there. But it's a wonderful building. Bits and pieces we found in it was a reliquary, which was a stone vessel in which there was a chalice. It was a wooden chalice, but it was found in the wall of Kewstoke Church when that was being restored in the 19th century. Why would there be a reliquary with a chalice inside that had traces of blood in it in the wall of Kewstoke Church? Well, Kewstoke Church was the parish church for Woodspring Priory. Woodspring Priory had been dissolved. It is often thought that some of the blood of Becket was actually in the priory. So this would have been a very sacred part of the priory. Probably the last prior, in order to make sure the King's Commissioners didn't get hold of this, went across to the local parish church, put it into the wall of the church, cemented over it, and it wasn't found until restoration in the 19th century. That reliquary is now in the Museum of Taunton. There's a copy in Western Museum, but the original is there. The only problem is we don't know what Archbishop Becket's blood group was, so we can't prove that it was his group. But why else would it be there? Mind you, the church was quite adept at inventing stories, and then people go and pretend that it was true, like my story of Jesus coming here. The last prior, he was founded. The last abbot of Glastonbury refused to sign on the dotted line, didn't accept Henry as being in charge of the church, and so he was hanged, drawn, and quartered for his trouble. And the last prior of Woodspring, he thought, well, blow this one like a trick. So I don't see why I should die. And I'll sign on the dotted line. So one day he was a Roman Catholic prior of Woodspring. The next day he'd become the Protestant vicar of Whirl. He just changed his religion. But not only doing that, he was also granted a pension and his own privy. So, great, okay. He got his own privy in Whirl. Quite what other people do. Anyhow, he made sure that before the commissioners had taken over the building, he chopped out their stunningly good pulpit, got his mates to cart it over the fields to Wick St Lawrence Church, cemented it in the wall there, and it's still there. That is the pulpit from Woodspring Priory. Somerset has some of the finest medieval pulpits in the country, and that's one of them. Not only that, where he'd become vicar of Whirl, he wanted to be comfortable, so he brought his prebendal stall from the monastery over the fields into St Martin's Church, Whirl, put it there, and to this day that is where the Vicar of Whirl sits when taking services. So nice little touch, nice little misericord. And you can see it's a monastic misericord. The seat comes up, because the long services in a monastery, you couldn't stand up all the time, so you had the seats there so you could lean back. And they invariably carve them. If you go to somewhere like Wells Cathedral, in the choir stalls there, those are the misericords, they're all beautifully carved. Same principle. Then, right, I've got 10 minutes to do the next few hundred years. Weston, let's move on to the 16th century. Weston actually becomes a manufacturing centre. Henry VIII needed copper, he needed ore, he needed calamine. He was doing all sorts of things, lots of war. And he got in touch with a chap called Petrus Filius and needed to open mines. In Whirl, they found a good supply of calamine, and so in 1528 they opened 8 mines here. So that was a major mining industry taking place. And then in 1566, there's this wonderful, I have to read out because it's a quote. Took a lease of Sir Henry Wallop of a hill in Somersetshire called Wordy Hill, and there set 10 or 12 persons, strangers and English, on work to mine and search for calamine, which the countrymen there do report, and got 20 or 30 tons of the said stone. The 12 persons strangers are Germans. They were brought in because the English were either too lazy or didn't know how to mine it. So here we are in 1566, bringing Europeans in to help us with our industry because we can't do it and we don't have the right expertise. And so these 12 persons, strangers and English, are working on these calamine mines. And the remnants can still be found, Hawthorne Hill, Ashley Drive, Hazeldean Road, and we were still mining ochre right up until the First World War in those areas. And most of the mining ceased in 1736. It was quite important. And the ore was taken from here across to Chepstow and up to the Tintern brass works. Which begs the question, if it was sent from here to Tintern, how did it get across the channel? We wouldn't have bothered taking by road up to Bristol. There must have been some method of getting it shipborne here. But where, how, we don't know. I won't read all of that, but in 1572 there was a fishing dispute at Anchor's Head between the lord of the manor and somebody who claimed that he owned the fishing rights. So fishing rights, so they were going back 16th century tussles in law. This indenture made the last day of June in the 14th year of the reign of our sovereign Lady Elizabeth, by the grace of God, Queen of England, France and Ireland, Defender of the Faith, etc., etc., between Edward Bache of Stansted in the County of Herts, Esquire, of the One Party, and Hugh Smith of Long Ashton in the County of Somerset, Esquire, and Matthew Smith of the Middle Temple in London, Esquire, etc., 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 who owns fishing rights. So, again, people were arguing then. Civil War. There was no such thing as the Siege of Weston-super-Mare, but this was put on a few years ago as a bit of entertainment on the airport. But Civil War did certainly affect us. 1642, and here is Glebe House. This is a sketch from 1832. Glebe House, which is still not Grove House, but Glebe House at the back of the sports field, the ex-tennis courts. In 1642, the rector of Weston was the Reverend Christopher Sandbury. He was a royalist, And he got a bit cheesed off in 1644 with some of the men in Weston who were parliamentarians. And so he actually arrested them and incarcerated them in the rectory. And because they were fighting to the wrong side. In 1645, Sir Thomas Austin arrived with cavaliers, and the rector had welcomed him. Unfortunately for him, the Western villagers who were supporting Cromwell got all their pitchforks and their scythes, and got their mates from Milton and Ashcombe and Worth come and help them, and they repulsed the cavaliers. You can imagine all these people riding on horseback, and these local yokels, and they sent them scattering. The rector then, having backed the wrong side, was promptly arrested, charged with high delinquency, found guilty, and in good West Country tradition, they forgot to do anything about it. So he just bided his time, waited for the end of the Civil War, waited for the end of Cromwell, waited for the restoration of Charles II, and hey ho, he was home and dry. The great thing in the West Country about, yes, of course, we're a bit Spanish in that respect. Yes, we appreciate the law, but we're just going to ignore it, all right? And that's Glebe House today. It's much altered. Look carefully how cleverly they've disguised it. There's a window there, and there's a window there, and there's a window there. That's not a window, that's not a window. But they've added those little bits to make it look even and match it up. This is the back of Glebe House. Is this where they were held under arrest? I don't know. Then, Battle of Sedgemoor, the whole thing, this is the next thing. The Duke of Monmouth, he decides that he needs to be the king, and we have this last battle, 1685, the last time a battle was ever fought on English soil, and he lost, as we know. And we are led to believe that this house in Worl, which is known today as Highcliffe House and was the Valiant Soldier pub. This is where Judge Jeffreys is reputed to have come to try local people who supported Monmouth and were then sent to the gallows. I've seen no documentary evidence ever to say that Judge Jeffreys did come here, but it's nice. It certainly was a pub, and it certainly was called the Valiant Soldier, so we're getting 5 minutes to go, a couple of hundred years through now. The Smith Pigot. Well, I won't go into the oddity of the Smith Pigots, but the bastard son of the Smiths married the bastard daughter of the Pigots, and they became the Smith Pigots, and they became very, very wealthy, and they owned all the land between Weston and Ashton Court. Completely bonkers, utterly mad family, inbred and mad. But anyhow, there were squires here, and this is a delightful. I won't expect you to be able to see it from here, but we're beginning to get decent maps recording who owns what fields, what roads there are. Here's a larger scale one. This is High Street today. This is West Street today. That's the road that goes up. This is the road that goes to Bristol, the Bristol Road. In red, I've written today's thing. So that's the YMCA there, the playhouse there. This is today's car park. This is the track that goes up at the side of Grove Park up to Quarry Road, which today we call Queen's Road. This would be Grove Park today, which was called the Clover Ground. This track went up to the church. There was no such thing as Lower Church Road then, so it went through the car park, today's car park. Whately Farm no longer exists. The Mill House Pen doesn't exist. Skinner's Farm, all of these things. Worthy Lane, there it is. That's the track of the Worthy there. Blakehay, that's the name of the field. That's a very ancient name from which we get Blakehay Theatre, because it's in the area of black soil, the Blakehay. And the ancient field system, the East Field, the West Field, the West Tyning, these are the medieval field systems. All gone now, but the name East Field is still with us, isn't it? Eastfield Gardens, Eastfield Road. And this map, 1792, Ashcott is actually Ashcombe, Milton, Kew, Stoke, 2 words, uphill, Old Nixon. Weston at the end of a track. The trouble is with Weston, you didn't come here in order to go somewhere else. You couldn't go through Weston. You only came here because you wanted to. Just the same today. We're not on the route to anywhere else. And this map you can see there. Now I really am pushed for time now. This is the 1806 map. In more detail, Waterfield Road, now Regent Street. Big Lamp Corner, which was the gossip corner, it was known as at one point, which is where, sorry, it's said the women used to stand and gossip, but you know, it's, this little track went off to the Meadow. That's where the orchard was, Meadow Street, Orchard Street. The boulevard didn't exist then, the road to Bristol. And that's Big Lamp Corner today, on the Village Green, which is either, whichever name you choose to give it. Why ever it was called a carrot, I don't think. I've never seen a carrot in that colour or shape. 1810 is the important date. This is when Weston gets the Enclosure Act. This is the time when Weston begins to get modern and land is enclosed, and we begin to see not the squirearchy in charge, but ordinary people with business acumen acquiring land and wanting to say in how the village is run. So that is a major change. These are the roads which are laid out in the Enclosure Award, including roads which never really came to much, like Wood Lane. You've got Manor Road, and there's a track that goes up into the woods. That was going to be a road across the hill to Cusack, and never really got anything more than that. But all these different roads, what I could do, I suppose, sometimes print these and oh, no, you're recording it, aren't you? So you'll be able to pick these up. The quarry, that was the parish quarry. This is where people could win the stone to build their homes. And of course, it wasn't until the railway came we could import stone. So everything before the railway had to be built of local material. And this is Quarry Road. This today is Queen's Road. These two buildings don't exist. The quarry is up here. It's a slightly idealised romantic picture, I think. And here, the Reverend Warden Piggott, he was the rector and squire. His painting by Thomas Gainsborough is in the museum. We've got two Gainsboroughs there. Really, probably worth well over £150,000. These are major works of art. George Cumberland, the great artist, he was a friend of Smith Pigott's and William Blake. He came to Weston like painting her. That's one of his sketches of Knightstone. And the rectory and Glebe House, the rectory which is today's Glebe House, and the Grove, which the Smith Pigotts eventually turned into a big manor house. You can see it on the right there. Glebe House again, you've seen. And on the seafront, the Reverend William Leeds, who was the rector of Rington, came to build himself a little cottage where he could sit and compose his ballads. And that today is the Thatched Cottage, 1774. The church, lamentably demolished, our medieval church demolished 1824, lock, stock and barrel. All we've got are some pictures of it, and it was replaced by that one, St John's Church. All we've got left is a bit of medieval window in a cottage just around the corner, the back of Smith's Hotel. Somebody's obviously building their cottage when the church was being pulled down. Thought, oh, I need some new windows. I'll go out overnight and pinch the church windows. So they're there. And we've got the gargoyles, but they're in the museum, not in the church. And the remains of the preaching cross, a stump that probably destroyed during the Puritan era rather than during the Reformation. I won't stop now. And so Weston then begins to develop, and the woods are planted by the Smith Pigotts. The Black Rock footpath, the toll road opens, and the cottages take on this sort of romantic feel in the woods. The gamekeeper's cottage, which actually, it's photographed there, but what a lovely little building. Ashcombe Manor Farm, and of course the fisheries at Burnbeck before the building of a pier. So people here fished, they farmed, and the fishing poles, the stalls are still there. Local cottages. This is in what today would be Orchard Place. This was the old farmhouse in Orchard Place, and these sketches of the farmer and his family, and along the seafront. This is all village Weston, and this is the grave of the Parsley family at St John's, who were one of the early non-squirearchical developers of Weston. The hotel, 1810, we opened the first hotel in Weston, which was called The Hotel, then Reeves and Rogers, behind the Royal, Claremont Lodge, and look at the population figures, how 1821, 20 years before the railway rise, Weston is suddenly much larger than the other villages. So we have a period when Weston is really developing before the railway arrives. And that will lead us into next week's lecture. How we move then into becoming a fashionable seaside resort before the railway brings the hoi polloi. Right, sorry, that last, yes, I've overshot by 3 minutes and I pushed that a bit too quick. There we are.